Welcome back on board the Starship. I'm talking with Tony Farrell, who is an ex-principal intelligence officer for South Yorkshire Police. And we were just talking before the break about the fact that you were sacked because you wanted to do a threat assessment which contained information about false flag terrorism. They weren't happy with that. They said that that was untenable, so they've sacked you. You then felt that they were encouraging you to appeal against this sacking then?
Well, just want to be clear, they sacked me for the beliefs I held. And the beliefs I held were articulated in the explanatory report that explained why I made my stance. Right? The issue of how the fact that the assignment didn't get delivered what was what triggered their request for me to explain myself in a report. And it was the views that I expressed in that report that I believe, it's my understanding is correct, that subsequently led to my dismissal.
Okay. So if you'd put a different point of view in this report, explained yourself in a different way, you probably wouldn't have got sacked.
Yeah, but I was, the only thing that was contained in that report was my honest opinions and beliefs and analysis. So I presented them with a problem, and they had to make a judgment as to where that left me as a principal intelligence analyst.
So you said that initially you thought, no, I'm not going to appeal against this, and then you changed your mind.
Yes.
What made you change your mind?
Well, the driving factor was the persuasiveness of the Director of Finance at the initial hearing as he sacked me, which was it was a bizarre occasion. It was not nasty. It was very amicable and very sad. And he himself said this is a very sad occasion for South Yorkshire Police, and commented on my performance over the years. And of course, there was no allegation of any incapability or any misconduct here. And I felt that was genuine. That they felt as though it would be in my interest to appeal to the police authority. Yeah. And I also, when I had time to stand back and reflect of the wider treatment and the importance of all of this, I came to the conclusion that I must appeal.
Yes.
So it's important for the
truth movement, you think?
One element was clearly the truth movement, but another element was personal justice. I felt as though they were using a sledgehammer to crack a nut in actually dismissing somebody who'd actually stood up for the truth. Yes. Which was in accordance with their own professional standards for honesty and integrity. So I felt as though wrong had been done to me, but this was more important than Tony Farrell. There was wider issues at stake here. We were talking about corruption in the highest places of a monstrous kind. Therefore, the more I became involved in this case, and for all sorts of other reasons, some of which were to do with my calling, my Christian calling, my religious beliefs, I felt compelled to make this stance. My conscience told me I had to make this stance. So there was an element.
You mentioned the 9th commandment.
Thou shalt not false witness against one's neighbour. Yeah. But there were other compelling. At the time I had deep spiritual Christian faith, and that I felt that there was a calling here to stand up and be counted, stand up for the truth. So that was what has given me great strength and the courage to actually make that stance, knowing full well that it could harm me. It could, I fully, when I made this stance, I was fully aware of the possibility of job loss. It's affected I've had to sell all my shares in a business I had. So it's been considerably harmful in terms of my personal financial security.
Yes. Now you submitted, because this document, which is a religious philosophical belief statement of Anthony Farrell. So it's some document. This is your argument basically for stating your beliefs.
Right.
And tell us.
Well, I appealed it to the Employment Tribunal.
Sure.
And there were two issues for the judge to determine initially. Whether this was potentially an unfair dismissal, and whether this was a discrimination on grounds of my beliefs. So the way the judge decided to sort this out was to treat them separately, and
I
therefore the first thing that needed to be sorted out, which was done at a recent pre-hearing, was to determine whether my beliefs were protected under the employment law.
This is where you're not allowed to discriminate against anyone who has a particular religious belief.
And the relevant employment regulations are the employment brackets religious and belief regulations from 2003.
Yes.
And they are applicable to religious beliefs and philosophical or philosophical beliefs.
Yes.
Now, and my beliefs, I think, were, to be fair, were a combination of religious beliefs, philosophical beliefs, and non-philosophical beliefs, because there were an element that, in order to believe that the government were lying, for instance, I didn't need not philosophical beliefs to tell me that. But in the wider strategic threat, there were elements where I was saying we have a satanic ideology here that's underpinned by the New World Order, and that can be drawn from biblical prophecy. That, in essence, is all prophesied. Now, for me to believe that, clearly that's a religious belief that believes in elements of the Bible.
Yeah.
And there were philosophical beliefs that had to be considered too. So a belief in the notion of false flag terrorism, following a Hegelian dialectic principle, could be loosely described as philosophical. And of course the court had to determine whether that combination of beliefs ultimately fell within the protection of the regulations. And if it did, then the case could proceed on the grounds of a potential discrimination case. Now the hearings, there's a 3-day hearing set aside in September to discuss that, but the pre-hearing...
September coming, 2011.
Yeah, and the pre-hearing review, the judgment has just come out, and it's the case is allowed to be continued as an unfair dismissal, but it will not be, at this stage, will not be proceeding on the grounds of a discrimination, because the judge determined that my beliefs were not protected under the appropriate regulations.
And he spells that out in this report.
Yes, the verdict and the reasoning is now out, and there is a mechanism for appeal. And at the moment, my barrister is looking over that report to see if there is a means to appeal against the judge's verdict on the beliefs alone.
I mean, I've had a look through the judge's reasons for rejecting that part of it.
I wouldn't want to comment on that until I've obviously that could be an appeal. So I want to see the expert opinion of a barrister. I have my own views, clearly, on the judge's write-up, but I wouldn't want to share those because it would possibly jeopardise my appeal.
Okay, yeah. Now, the other part of it, the unfair dismissal, so that's going to go to a tribunal then? And when does that take place?
That's the 6th, 7th and 8th of September, if I'm correct in thinking.
The 6th, 7th and 8th of September. And is that open to the public?
That will be open. It'll be in the Sheffield Employment Tribunal.
The Sheffield Employment Tribunal.
Yes.
Is that the name of the actual court then? Is that,
yes.
Right, okay.
And I do believe that the appeal hearing from the beliefs which may be set in the interim period will be open to the public. The first hearing, the pre-hearing review, was open to the public, but I'd chosen not to take any steps to make this public. I wanted to give every opportunity of this to run its course with a view to seeing if there was a settlement. But the more I think about it, I think it's in the public interest. That,
so you think that they might take into account that it was unfair and therefore give you a settlement figure, but you're not sure whether actually putting information out on a TV show affects that?
It may well do. This case could end up in a number of ways. It could clearly go full court to fought, and I could lose, right? And I'd have to pick up the pieces, and it'd be a disaster financially for me. But I'm prepared to take that risk, and the odds of winning may not be high. This is not going to be an easy case to win. It's a massively complex case. There is a possibility of a settlement, but up until this moment in time, there's been no discussions between myself and the respondent, South Yorkshire Police Authority, as to any settlement at all,
Right.
any negotiated settlement possibility. So none of that has occurred yet. And the other thing is if I simply don't have the means to continue the case, because it's expensive, having to find my own barrister fees, having been sacked, I've still to find full-time employment, salaried. So it is a struggle.
Now, we mentioned that there's 43 different
Police forces in England and Wales,
and each
yes.
one of them has a principal
Normally,
intelligence
yes.
analyst. Now, you were telling me that that you have conferences where all of the intelligence analysts sort of meet up and compare notes, sort of thing.
Yeah, there's a principal analyst networking forum, and that meets under the supervision and the arrangements of the National Police Improvement Agency. So principal analysts who are head of professions have a good opportunity to discuss and look at wider issues that affect the intelligence analysis profession.
Yes.
So you're talking in terms of staff training, standards of intelligence analysis, and strategic analysis. So those are very good forums for working with your peers in order to improve the country's intelligence analysis function for law enforcement.
And have you been able to discuss any of this with those other intelligence analysts from other forces?
The answer to that is I've not discussed anything with any other analyst. This all happened fast. So from the time this dawned on me to the time that I was dismissed, it was basically, we're talking about a week at work. Right. And I certainly didn't do anything that was not under the full control of management. Yes. I didn't want to set any hairs running on this. Now, in the previous meetings, the notion of anything like this being false flag, 9/11/77, I can't ever recall any intelligence analyst ever suggesting that this could be the case. Now, is that because no principal analyst thinks this? It could well be. It came as a surprise to me. Yeah. But now I know, and I know what I know. It seems almost desirable for intelligence analysts who have that purist role to actually in some way be alerted to the possibility and let their analytical skills weigh up what's correct here.
And do you ever communicate with a special branch or MI5? Is that...
No. As a principal, certainly within South Yorkshire Police, although I was head of profession, I was not privy to special branch intelligence.
Although why is that? Why wouldn't you be given information from the special branch then? Surely you ought to share information.
Well, we were talking a strategic threat assessment assignment. So the way we'd always formulated these was very much on the strategic threat from terrorism to accept the government rhetoric and narrative on the terrorist threat as gospel truth. Right.
And how would that information come to your desk then from government?
Well, it would come through in a normal, the normal reports, strategic threat assessments that were put forward by central agencies, intelligence agencies, and the National Police Improvement Agency would put out guidance of various models, the National Intelligence Model, the guidance on the strategic threat assessment, how to actually formulate a model, and the threat from terrorism would be something whereby the special branch would normally produce a sanitized analysis, and I'd be privy to the sanitized version, but the detailed intelligence I would never be privy to. That's because certainly you can't have your hands in every pie. And my role was rather more strategic and policy making, rather than having all the fine detail of the intelligence.
Okay, and how do you see it panning out, Tony? I mean, are you confident? I mean, what are your hopes with this tribunal? obviously you want to win it.
Well,
I mean,
it's not so much confidence. I am content. I am content that I've done the right thing.
yes,
I believe that they were wrong to dismiss me. I believe that I've had a call in and I've stood up for a worthy cause, a cause that actually is so massive and important
yes,
that my particular welfare almost becomes irrelevant here.
right,
So whether I win or lose this case,
yeah,
and even with hindsight, if I'd lost this case, if I lose this case, I would still do the same again, because I'm standing for truth.
yes,
I'm standing up against monstrous tyranny perpetrated within our own political establishments, within secret societies, and quite frankly, unless people stand up from within the service, where are we going?
yeah,
And my plea would be that, and my hope is that in some way, shape or form, by making this stance, that people, good people in the police service, are alerted to the possibility more than they were beforehand, and others follow suit. And that in some shape or form, some manifestation occurs whereby a greater body stands up against this, because it's rotten from within.
yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of friends in the police, and you know, they are good people. Like in any walk of life, you always get the odd bad apple in any profession. But you know, I think it's the police often are in a difficult situation, because some of them may know of what you found out about, and what can they do about it? You know, because they end up losing their job if they do what you do, or what you have done. I mean, what would your advice be to other police officers who believe that what you're saying is true about the 7/7 false flag attack?
Well, I think they need to. I think the police, like say, for instance, South Yorkshire Police, for example, they run. They should walk their talk. So, and what I mean by that is that they run by a mantra: justice with courage. Right.
That's their slogan.
That's
on
their slogan
on their
that they've
vans.
used since. I mean, that was one of the most inspirational mantras when I first joined the police service in 1995. I found that reassuring. I like that.
Right.
It struck a chord with me. And of course, in my situation, I felt as though I had courage in seeing injustice. So I stood up. I held firm with that mantra. And I think it's incumbent on other senior officers now to look at that mantra, look at themselves, look at everybody needs to look from within, within their own souls, and do their own soul searching, and not delude themselves. We have a situation, I think, here, whereby, to quote Orwell, George Orwell, in times of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. And of course, I do feel the masses are actually fooled as well. The masses, not deliberately fooled, but to use a quote from J. Edgar Hoover, the individual is handicapped by having to confront a conspiracy so monstrous that he can't believe it exists. And I think that's the state of play in most people in the United Kingdom at the moment. That most people think the mere notion of false flag terrorism by our own government is simply out of the question. They simply, and they can't get further than that. And I think mentally, emotionally, we need, and psychologically, our nation needs to wake up. And wake up fast and stand up firm.
The crime is so big, most people can't see it. Yeah. Okay, then, Tony. Well, I will endeavour to try and get down to your tribunal if you wish, and perhaps cover it on this show. But thanks very much indeed for your bravery, and I really hope you do get some justice. And I also hope that the victims of the 7/7 London bombings get justice. And just thanks again, Tony, for coming on board.
My pleasure.
I will see you at your tribunal. It just remains for me to say, keep your eyes on the skies, keep your feet on the ground, and tell all your friends about this show.